Chapter 6. Dragons in her backyard. The room became completely still. Neither twin looked away from her. Beth simply stared. Finally, she pointed at Chase. Absolutely not. You look maybe 35. Then Chad spoke. Dragons age slowly. Elizabeth's mouth opened. For several long seconds, no sound came out. Finally, "What?" Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "We're 300-year-old dragon shifters," Chase said gently. "We were born dragons. We simply have the ability to take human form." Simply, she thought. Beth looked from one twin to the other, waiting, watching. Surely one of them would smile. Neither did. "So," she said slowly, "this is the part where I'm supposed to discover you've both escaped from a very nice psychiatric hospital." Under different circumstances, Chase might have laughed. Instead, he simply shook his head. No. Beth searched both faces again, still serious. "Oh, my." She slowly lowered herself back into the chair. "I believed Anna when she said David was a bear shifter." She rubbed both hands over her face. "I even met him." She looked back at the twins. "But dragons?" Another long silence. "I thought dragons were myths." "They became myths," Chad corrected quietly. Chase added, "because people simply stopped believing. Our kind allowed the stories to fade. We found it safer that way." Beth blinked. "Your kind?" "There are dragon clans hidden throughout the world." She frowned. "Clans?" The twins exchanged another glance. Finally, Chase answered. "Small kingdoms." Beth stared. "Kingdoms?" "Yes." "More than one?" "Several." Silence. Beth suddenly laughed. Not because anything was funny, because her brain had officially surrendered. "Yesterday morning, my biggest concern was whether my boss was going to steal credit for another project. Today," she pointed at the twins, "I'm apparently sitting in my living room talking to two 300-year-old dragon shifters from a hidden kingdom." Neither interrupted. Beth stopped pacing, looked at them, really looked, then quietly asked, "How do I know you're telling the truth?" Silence. Finally, Chase asked, "What would convince you?" Beth answered immediately, "I want to see them. Your dragons." They were looking at her in surprise, and neither answered her question. "Can I see them?" She wondered if that was allowed. She knew Anna had seen her mate's bear. The excitement that surged through both dragons nearly overwhelmed their humans. Finally, their mate wanted to meet them. Neither Chad nor Chase moved immediately. Instead, Chad smiled softly. "You can." Beth blinked. "Just like that?" "We've waited 300 years for this moment," Chase said. "Why would we refuse?" Beth studied their faces, looking for any hint of deception. Finding none only made the situation feel more surreal. "So, you'll just," she gestured vaguely with both hands, "turn into dragons?" "If that's what you'd like." Her practical mind immediately found another problem. Not in here. Both twins smiled. Our dragons wouldn't fit. Beth looked around her modest living room. She imagined 2 dragons squeezed between the couch and the television. Despite everything, she laughed. It would definitely be a tight fit. The twins chuckled softly, full of nervous, excited energy. It probably would. Beth's smile faded as another thought struck her. My neighbours. What about them? If 2 dragons suddenly appear in my backyard, someone is going to call the police. She looked toward the front window. Or the National Guard. They won't. Beth frowned. What do you mean, they won't? They won't see us. She folded her arms. How is that possible? Dragon magic, Chase answered simply. Beth stared. You need to be a little more specific than that. Our magic allows us to choose who sees our dragons, Chad explained. To everyone else, your backyard will look exactly as it does now. So my next-door neighbours will see nothing, even if someone walks outside while you're standing there. They'll wonder why you're talking to yourself. Beth blinked. That's incredibly useful. It has kept our existence hidden for centuries. She considered that. Actually, it made an unsettling amount of sense. Legends, blurry photographs, stories dismissed as imagination. People claiming they'd seen dragons. Maybe they had. Beth slowly exhaled. Okay. The twins waited. She looked from one to the other, then toward the sliding glass door leading to her backyard, then back again. Show me. Neither twin tried to hide their excitement. They exchanged one glance before Chad smiled warmly. As you wish. He offered her his hand. Princess. They watched her expressive amber eyes for her reaction. Beth didn't object. She simply looked at his hand for a moment before placing hers in it. Let's go meet your dragons. They exchanged one glance before Chad smiled warmly. As you wish. The twins relaxed a little bit. The cool evening air greeted them as they stepped into Beth's backyard. The rain had washed everything clean. The grass glistened beneath the porch light, while stars slowly emerged overhead. Beth rubbed her hands together in anticipation. Her pulse was racing. The twins walked silently toward opposite ends of the yard, leaving nearly 30 feet between them. They turned to face her. Neither spoke. Neither moved. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Beth caught the faintest shimmer, like moonlight dancing across crystal. The outlines of Chad and Chase simply dissolved. No explosion, no swirling smoke, only a brief twinkling of what must be their ancient dragon magic. And where 2 men had stood, 2 dragons now occupied her backyard. Beth forgot how to breathe. They were enormous. If a city bus had somehow been stood upright on its end, they would have looked just as tall. Massive wings folded neatly against powerful bodies. Long necks arched gracefully above her roofline. Their tails stretched almost the length of the yard. Each dragon was breathtaking. Their scales shimmered in countless shades of green, deep emerald, forest green, jade, moss. hints of pale sage caught by the moonlight, almost like polished gemstones laid one beside another by nature itself. She stared from one dragon to the other. "They're beautiful." The words escaped before she realized she'd spoken. Mate, not scared. Both dragons swelled with hope and pride. They lowered their massive heads slightly, not in dominance, in greeting. Beth's heart pounded. I should be terrified, she thought. Instead, she was fascinated. Beth studied the two enormous dragons standing before her. Even now, she couldn't truly tell them apart. Their variegated green scales caught the sunlight in nearly identical patterns. If there were differences in the shades of green, they were so subtle they were almost impossible to see. She doubted anyone else would ever notice them, but she wasn't relying on her eyes. As they lowered their massive heads toward her, their scents reached her. So alike they blended together into something uniquely theirs, yet each carried the faint, familiar note she had come to recognize. A smile spread across her face. "Hello, Chad," she said softly, resting her hand against the first dragon's muzzle. She turned to the second without hesitation, her smile growing. "And hello to you too, Chase." Both dragons froze. Through the mate bond, shock and overwhelming joy surged toward her. Even like this, she knew. Neither dragon moved, afraid that even the smallest motion might frighten her away. Instead, both dragons rumbled with unmistakable satisfaction. Beth slowly stepped off the porch. One careful step, then another. The dragons stood still, afraid that even the smallest movement might frighten her. As she moved forward, they slowly lowered their long necks until their massive heads rested only a few inches apart before her, almost inviting, hopeful. Beth stood perfectly still. The dragons waited. Neither breathed, neither blinked. Finally, she took another hesitant step forward. Her heart hammered inside her chest. She slowly raised both hands. One settled against Chase's neck. The other rested gently on Chad's. Warm, silky, smooth. The scales beneath her fingertips felt nothing like she had expected. Not rough, not hard. Instead, they were polished and surprisingly warm, each scale fitting perfectly against the next, like living pieces of emerald glass. Almost velvety where the skin flexed beneath the long, graceful curve of each neck. Both dragons closed their eyes. A deep rumble escaped Chase's chest. Another answered from Chad. The sound rolled through the quiet neighborhood like distant thunder. Beth's eyes widened. "You," she whispered. "You purr." The rumbling grew louder, longer. Both dragons leaned almost imperceptibly into her touch, reveling in every gentle stroke of her hands. The vibrations travelled through her palms, up her arms, and settled warmly in her chest. Beth couldn't stop smiling. "I bet my neighbours think another storm is rolling in." Neither dragon cared. Their mate was touching them. After 300 years, their mate was petting them. The thunderous purring grew even louder. Inside their shared consciousness, both twins suddenly recognized the problem. Chase spoke mentally to his brother. "Too much more of this and our dragons aren't going to give us back control. Not willingly." Chase felt his dragon's immediate objection. mate touching us. More, need more. Chad's dragon wholeheartedly agreed. Never leaving, pet forever. Chad couldn't help laughing despite the moment. Pet forever? His dragon answered with complete seriousness. Forever acceptable. The twins exchanged an amused glance through their bond. We should probably change back, Chad said mentally. Neither dragon moved. You heard me, Chad spoke to his dragon. Still nothing. It took both twins another full minute of gentle persuasion before their dragons reluctantly surrendered control, making it abundantly clear that if Elizabeth wanted to pet them again later, they would have absolutely no objections. Chapter 7. Back Inside. The moment the twins resumed their human forms, Chad's smile faded. Princess. Elizabeth looked up. What? You're cold. She blinked. I am? He nodded toward her arms. She followed his gaze. Goosebumps covered her skin, and she had unconsciously wrapped her arms around herself. Only now did she realize the evening air had grown surprisingly cold. Seattle's early spring nights still carried winter's bite, and she had spent several minutes outside in nothing more than a light sweater. I guess I am. Without thinking, both twins stepped toward her at exactly the same moment. They stopped, looked at one another, then laughed quietly. I'll get the door, Chase offered. And I'll get our future mate back inside, Chad replied. Elizabeth rolled her eyes. I haven't agreed to that part yet. No, Chad admitted with an easy smile. But we're optimistic. Despite herself, she smiled. As they walked toward the house, another question suddenly occurred to her. She stopped halfway through the sliding door. Wait, your clothes. They glanced down at themselves. What about them? Chase asked. They changed with you. Yes. They didn't rip apart. No. They didn't fall off. They never do. Beth frowned thoughtfully. Anna's bare husband couldn't do that. How? The brothers answered together. Dragon magic. She looked from one to the other. You know... What? 5 minutes ago, I would have demanded a much better explanation. And now? Chad asked. She glanced toward the backyard. My neighbors didn't call the police after 2 dragons the size of buses purred loud enough to sound like thunder. She shook her head slowly. I'm beginning to accept dragon magic as a perfectly reasonable answer. Both twins smiled. Back inside, they settled once more into the living room. For a few moments, no one spoke. The quiet felt surprisingly comfortable. Neither Chad nor Chase made any move toward the front door. Neither dragon had the slightest intention of leaving if they could help it. Finally, Chad asked softly, Did you enjoy dinner? Elizabeth smiled. I did. It was wonderful. I'm glad. She looked between them. Did you two eat? Silence. Neither answered. Her eyes narrowed. You didn't. Chase rubbed the back of his neck. We were a little preoccupied. Worried about fixing what we broke, Chad admitted. Elizabeth's heart softened despite herself. You spent the entire evening worrying about me. Neither denied it. She looked toward them. Pizza? Both dragons perked up instantly. Elizabeth laughed. So that's a yes. She tried to hand him the menu. You order. Without thinking, Chad declined it. We like pepperoni. You? Yes. He pulled out his cell phone. Beth froze and frowned as she listened to him place the order. Why would he know the number to order pizza around here? Realization slowly crossed her face. You aren't staying in a downtown hotel, are you? The twins exchanged one of their silent conversations. No, Chase admitted. Where? A few blocks from here, Chad added. Her eyebrows rose. A few blocks? We bought a house. You bought a house? Elizabeth stared. You've been in Seattle less than a week. The twins looked at one another. There wasn't really a graceful way to answer. Our dragons, Chase explained carefully, refused to stay in a hotel after we found our mate. They considered 10 miles too far away. Elizabeth blinked. 10 miles? They were quite adamant. She stared at them another long moment, then pointed at both of them. That's creepy. Both twins looked genuinely confused. What is? Chad asked. You bought a house down the street because you met me. Our dragons insisted. She pointed again. That explanation made it even creepier. Neither brother looked offended, only puzzled. Chase frowned thoughtfully. It wasn't intended to be creepy, as you call it. I know, Elizabeth sighed dramatically. I have a feeling I'm going to say, that's creepy, a lot around you two. Chad smiled. As long as you keep talking to us, we'll consider that progress. Before Elizabeth could answer, the doorbell rang. That was fast. The pizza place is only a few streets over, Chase said. A few minutes later, the three of them sat around Elizabeth's kitchen table, sharing pizza instead of gourmet Italian food. It felt unexpectedly normal, comfortable, almost like old friends catching up. Beth looked from Chad to Chase and back again. One question had been bothering her since they admitted they expected to share a mate. She set down her slice of pizza. Can I ask you something? Anything, they answered together. She hesitated. What happens when one of you gets jealous? The question seemed to genuinely puzzle both brothers. They looked at one another before Chase finally smiled. Elizabeth? It can't happen, she frowned. Everybody gets jealous. We don't. Not of each other. That's impossible. It would be, Chad agreed, if we were simply brothers. But you're not? We are brothers, he smiled. We're also something very few people, even among dragons, completely understand. Beth waited. Our souls were joined before we were born. She blinked. What does that even mean? Chase leaned forward slightly. Imagine two musicians playing the same song. She nodded. They each have their own instrument. They each hear the music differently. They each contribute something unique. But, he said quietly, it's still one song. Beth thought about that. So, you're two different people sharing one life, Chad finished. She wasn't entirely convinced. But you still have your own thoughts. We do. You have different personalities. We do, Chase admitted with a smile. You don't always think the same. No, Chad said. We often see a problem from different perspectives. But that's our strength, Chase continued. One of us usually sees the opportunity, while the other sees how to make it happen. Beth looked between them. So, you complement each other? Exactly. And you don't argue? The twins exchanged amused smiles. Occasionally, Chad admitted, usually over whose turn it is to tell Mother we accidentally set something on fire when we were younger. Chase laughed. But when it matters, we've never stood on opposite sides of an important decision, Chad finished. Beth looked thoughtful. So if, she searched for the right words, if I kiss Chad, I'd be happy for him, Chase answered immediately. And if I kiss Chase, I'd be happy for him, Chad echoed. Beth frowned. No offense, but that's weird. Both brothers laughed. We've been told that before. She studied them carefully. I don't understand. You will. Chad's voice was remarkably gentle. Because eventually, you'll feel the bond too. Beth opened her mouth to object. He raised one hand. I'm not asking you to believe us tonight. I'm only asking you to believe that we aren't pretending. She looked from one brother to the other, still trying to imagine what they were describing. Finally, Chad spoke again. Elizabeth. You can't love me without loving my brother. Chase's eyes met hers. And you can't love me without loving him. Silence settled over the kitchen. The sincerity in their voices left no room for doubt. Beth slowly shook her head. I hear the words, she smiled weakly. But my human brain still thinks one of you should be throwing pizza at the other. That pulled genuine laughter from both twins. Even their dragons chuckled through the bond. Beth couldn't help smiling too. Okay, she admitted. I still don't completely believe you. We didn't expect you to. But, she looked thoughtfully between them, I'm willing to keep learning. After talking for several more minutes, Elizabeth looked thoughtfully between them. So, the twins waited. I have an idea. Chase smiled. We're listening. You've spent the last 300 years wondering if your mate could tell you apart. Yes. And apparently you've spent the last 2 days trying to prove it. Both twins looked appropriately embarrassed. Elizabeth couldn't help smiling. So let's settle it. Their dragons immediately became attentive. How? I'll close my eyes, she shrugged. You kiss me. I'll tell you which one of you it is. Silence. Then Chase smiled. I like your idea. So do I. Chad looked almost relieved. It would answer the question once and for all. Elizabeth pointed a finger at him. And after tonight, no more tests. I promise. No loopholes. No loopholes, Chad agreed. You two have already used your lifetime supply. Chase laughed. Fair enough. I'll keep my eyes closed until both of you have kissed me. She smiled. And no talking. Agreed, they answered together. She closed her eyes. A moment later, she heard firm footsteps. Someone stopped in front of her. Gentle fingers brushed her cheek. Then came the kiss. Warm, tender, unhurried. He stepped away. Beth smiled but kept her eyes closed. It was Chase, but she didn't say it aloud. "I'm not telling yet." The footsteps retreated. Behind her, the twins exchanged a glance. Brother, one last test. One last test. Instead of stepping forward himself, Chad gently nudged Chase. They had a quick mental conversation. You promised. I have to know. Reluctantly, Chase moved back in front of her again. Elizabeth stood patiently, her eyes still closed, waiting, trusting. Chase leaned forward, but before he could kiss her, Elizabeth lifted one hand. Her fingertips rested gently against his lips. A smile touched the corners of her mouth. Chad. Both twins froze. Without opening her eyes, she continued softly. I only have one kiss left to give tonight. Chase stood still with her fingers on his lips. Are you sure you want Chase to get yours? Silence. Then Chase laughed. Behind her, Chad let out a resigned sigh. You knew. Beth slowly turned around and opened her eyes. I knew the first time. She looked directly at Chad. So, are we finally done with the tests? For a long moment, Chad simply looked at her. Then he smiled. The smile was filled with relief. I promised you no more tests. He walked toward her. You deserve an apology. Beth raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. He stopped in front of her. I'm sorry. I spent 300 years hoping my true mate could tell us apart. When I found you, he shook his head. I couldn't stop needing proof. I should have trusted it when you identified our dragons. Beth's expression softened. And now? Now I know. He smiled. May I please have my kiss? Beth pretended to consider the request. She looked over at Chase. What do you think? Chase grinned. I think my brother has finally learned his lesson. I think so too. She looked back at Chad. Then yes. She slipped her arms around his neck. You may have your kiss. For just a moment, 300 years of discipline deserted Chad. He pulled her gently into his arms and kissed her. Not to test, not to prove a prophecy, simply because she had chosen him. His dragon purred with such overwhelming happiness that Chad had to mentally shove his dragon aside just to remain standing. When the kiss ended, Elizabeth rested her forehead against his chest for one brief heartbeat. Then she stepped back and gave Chad a look. Not angry, not hurt. A look that clearly said, I know exactly what you did. Chad sighed. No more tests, he said. No more tests. Chase agreed immediately. You have my word. Chad promised. Elizabeth studied both of them for several long moments. Finally, she nodded. I believe you. Relief flooded through both dragons. She smiled faintly. But both twins waited. I've learned a few things tonight. Like what? Chase asked. She began counting on her fingers. Dragon shifters are real. I am apparently the mate of 2 300-year-old dragons. The second. Your dragons think buying a house down the street after knowing me for 2 days is perfectly reasonable. Which is still creepy. Neither twin argued. And, she continued, raising a fourth finger, if I choose you, she looked from Chad to Chase. I'm leaving everything I've ever known. They heard the uncertainty in her voice. Neither interrupted. My job, my friends, my home, my country. She took a slow breath. To move to a hidden mountain kingdom full of dragons. Silence settled over the room. Finally, Chad nodded. When you put it that way, it sounds overwhelming. It is overwhelming, Elizabeth admitted. She looked at both of them with surprising tenderness. I'm not saying no. Hope flared instantly. I'm saying, Elizabeth smiled tiredly. I think my brain has officially reached its processing limit for one day. Neither twin blamed her. She walked toward the front door, expecting them to follow. I'll sleep. She reached for the doorknob and looked back. You too. She pointed toward the door. Go home. Of course, Chad said pleasantly. Elizabeth nodded. Then, instead of walking toward the front door, both twins turned and headed deeper into the house. She blinked. What are you doing? Neither stopped. Checking the house, Chase answered matter-of-factly as he disappeared down the hallway. Making sure everything is secure, Chad added while testing the lock on the kitchen window. Elizabeth stood frozen beside the front door. She watched Chase disappear into the guest bedroom, then the bathroom, then her home office. Meanwhile, Chad checked every window latch in the kitchen before moving into the dining room. She slowly closed the front door again. Of course, neither twin seemed to notice the amused disbelief in her voice. To them, this was perfectly normal. Within minutes, they had checked every lock, every window, and every empty room in the house. Finally, the twins returned to the living room. "All clear," Chase said. Chad nodded in satisfaction. "Good." Elizabeth simply stared at them. "You plan to do this every night, don't you?" The twins exchanged a puzzled glance. "If our mate is sleeping alone," Chase answered. "Yes," Chad said, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. She folded her arms. "That's—" Both men waited. "Creepy." Neither looked offended, only confused. "We're protecting you," Chad said. "I know." "And that is creepy," Chase frowned thoughtfully. "I don't think we're using that word the same way." A laugh escaped before Elizabeth could stop it. "I don't think we are either." For the first time that evening, all three of them laughed together. When the laughter faded, Chad's expression grew serious again. "We'll respect your decision, Elizabeth." She nodded. "I know. We won't ask again tonight. But tomorrow," Chase said quietly, "we hope you'll tell us whether you'll allow us to spend the rest of our lives proving this wasn't a mistake." Her heart squeezed painfully. She looked at both of them for a long moment. "I'll give you my answer tomorrow." She opened the front door once more. This time, they actually walked toward it. At the threshold, Chad hesitated. "Sleep well," he smiled softly. "Princess." For just a heartbeat, Elizabeth considered correcting him. Instead, she simply smiled. "Good night, Chad." "Good night, Chase." They waited until they heard the lock engage before finally walking toward the house they'd purchased only a few blocks away. Inside, Elizabeth leaned against the closed door and let out a long breath. Her world had changed forever. Tomorrow, she would tell them her decision. Chapter 8. Girl Talk. The house felt strangely quiet after, but Beth knew she wasn't going to sleep anytime soon. Her mind refused to stop replaying everything that had happened over the last 48 hours. The library, the dinners, the first kiss, the betrayal that wasn't, the dragons, the prophecy, and tonight's kisses. She smiled despite herself, then reached for her phone. She needed input. Anna would still be awake, waiting for an update. She barely finished dialing before Anna's face appeared on her phone screen. "There you are," Anna exclaimed. "I've been waiting all evening. Start talking." Beth laughed. "You were expecting my call?" "We've been friends long enough to know your brain would be running 100 miles an hour after they left. I was just waiting for your call." Beth settled onto her couch, tucking her feet beneath her. "You'd be right." "So?" "Anna, they are shifters." "I knew it. I knew they were acting like shifters who had found their mate." Beth took a deep breath and continued. Anna, they dragon shifters. Wait, did you say dragons? Yes. Beth, are you sure? Beth let out a breath. Sit back. This is going to take a while. Beth began telling her everything. She described the dragons, how enormous they were, how beautiful, how they had lowered their necks so she could touch them, how they purred, sounding like rolling thunder. Anna smiled through the entire story. I still can't believe I was petting dragons. I can. Beth looked surprised. You can? Anna nodded. Once you accept shifters exist, dragons are just another kind of shifter. I suppose. Beth hesitated. I ask them something. What? What happens if one of them gets jealous? Anna smiled knowingly. And? They said they don't. Not of each other. They said because their souls are connected, jealousy isn't possible. Anna nodded. That makes perfect sense. Beth frowned. It does? Oh, yes. Anna settled deeper into her chair. There are two wolf shifters, the alpha and his beta of the neighbouring shifter community. They share one mate. Beth blinked. They do? Anna nodded. I've watched them together. They're completely devoted to their mate. No competition. No jealousy. No keeping score. They love each other like brothers and work together to spoil their mate. Beth sat quietly. I thought maybe Chad and Chase were just trying to convince me. I don't think so. Anna smiled. Shifter relationships don't work like human ones. What do you mean? They don't spend months wondering who they should date. They don't keep looking to see if someone prettier comes along. When they find their mate, she shrugged, they're done. Forever. Beth thought about the certainty she'd seen in the twins' eyes. They really do make it sound that simple. For them, Anna smiled. It is. Beth suddenly sat upright. Oh. What? I forgot to tell you something. Anna laughed. With you, that sentence is becoming dangerous. They bought a house. Anna blinked. They what? A house. Not too far from my house. Silence. Then a slow grin spread across Anna's face. They told you it was because their dragons refused to stay in a hotel. Beth pointed toward the phone. Exactly. They said 10 miles was too far away. Anna laughed. Oh, honey, I think they're closer than that. Beth frowned. What do you mean? Let me use my mate as an example. He isn't home. Beth looked surprised. Where is he? Outside. Outside? Doing his nightly perimeter check. I thought your community already had patrols. We do. Every night. There are guards throughout the community. Then why is he outside? Anna smiled knowingly. because those patrols protect everyone. My husband wants to be the one who makes sure I'm safe before he goes to bed. Beth sat quietly. There's actually a bear positioned at both the front and back door right now, watching out while my husband circles the property. They don't have to do that. Beth looked toward her bedroom window. They want to. They're shifters. Beth slowly smiled. You think? Anna nodded before she could finish. I think your dragon mates are making laps around or flying over your house right now. They said they were going home. Anna laughed. Did they say it, or did you assume it? Beth laughed so hard she nearly snorted. Oh no. What? I'm going to wake up tomorrow and they're going to tell me they inspected every tree within 3 blocks. Anna grinned. And they'll honestly wonder why you think that's strange. Beth shook her head. She didn't even finish. Both women said together, creepy. Their laughter echoed through both houses. How many times did you call them creepy today? Beth laughed. At least 3. Anna burst out laughing. Only 3? They're making remarkable progress. After a moment, Anna gave Beth a mischievous smile. So, Beth immediately recognized that look. No. You don't even know what I was going to ask. I have a pretty good idea. Anna laughed. I'm simply saying. She leaned closer to the camera. Shifter mates have a reputation. Beth covered her face with both hands. Anna. What? They're fiercely protective. They're incredibly affectionate. And from everything I've learned, she grinned, they're very determined to make sure their mate knows exactly how loved she is. Beth groaned. I am not having this conversation. Anna giggled. I'm keeping it PG. Barely. I'm just saying, she smiled warmly. My bear shifter husband has never let me doubt for even 1 second that he thinks I'm the most beautiful woman in the world. Beth smiled softly. Neither had Chad or Chase. Not once. Anna's teasing expression faded into something gentler. So, what are you going to do? Beth looked toward the dark window. She didn't answer immediately. Finally, I'm going to accept them. Anna smiled. I think that's the right choice. I think I decided before they even left. My brain just needed a little longer than my heart. Anna nodded. I understand. Beth smiled. Can you believe it? What? 2 girls who grew up bouncing through the foster system, became best friends, and somehow both ended up with shifters. Anna smiled thoughtfully. I don't think we found them. Beth looked up. I think they found us. The 2 friends sat in comfortable silence for a long moment. Finally, Anna smiled. When are you leaving for Dragon Mountain? Beth laughed. It's Hidden Mountain, and I don't even know where it is. You'll find out soon enough. Anna's expression softened. Just promise me one thing. What? Don't disappear without letting me say goodbye. Beth's eyes stung unexpectedly. I promise. I'll keep you updated every step of the way. I know you will. After saying goodnight, Beth ended the call. She stood quietly in her dark living room, then wandered to the front window, pulling the curtain back just enough to peek outside. The street looked perfectly normal, quiet, peaceful, empty. She smiled to herself. If you're really out there, she shook her head affectionately. That's still creepy. She let the curtain fall closed. But somehow, knowing 2 dragons might be circling her neighborhood made her feel safer than she'd ever felt in her life. Thank you for continuing with Enchanted Realms on another incredible journey of love and fateful encounters. Beth has discovered the impossible, but believing in dragons is only the beginning. One unforgettable day, one life-changing question, and one simple answer that will change 3 lives forever. Will she say yes? Join us next time